Today's video in Kaye's Corner, we're going to discuss some easy 9-patch assembly and more. Well, how are you folks all doing now that you've been sequestered in your home? Are you one of the homes that has all the toilet paper and all the paper towels? My goodness, what's the world gonna come to? But our hearts go out to all of you that are really having a struggle. We know this is tough on everyone. It's tough on all of us in the industry. It's tough on folks who are actually coming down with this virus. And the only thing we can do is stay diligent about this, do what we're asked to do, hunker down if we're asked to. And we talked about this, and we thought what we would try to do is to do a video that may be something real inspiring that you could dig in your stash, something easy to do, something that would be productive, keep you at that sewing machine. And while I've been sewing fairly regularly between the barn and the sewing, and every closet's fairly organized in the house, I do need a haircut. But aside from all of those things, we talked about how could we help our sewers. And so what we decided to do was our download pattern for the subject matter that I'm going to discuss today, which is country lanes. We're going to sell for $2. It's kind of like $2 chuck. You know that wine you can buy for $2? I think it's more than $2 now. But anyway, this pattern you can download so you don't have to leave your house. You don't have to go out. And we know that you're all sitting on a stash. The original quilt is done in a vintage, and you can probably see it behind me. It's very vintagey. It has a common background, and I love, in this case, a busy background. So let's just say you're working vintagey. You might find something that has a toile or a lot going on in it, and that would be your background. That way, every time you cut it, it would look a little different. The other thing is, I was looking around at patterns that I could recreate and what would be fun to do. I thought, this is also a quilt that I think if you had one of those really wild and crazy busy fabrics where it has 30 colors in it and all this going on, you probably could use one background and one print and make a killer quilt. So the original one was done in very vintagey, Civil War kind of fabrics. And so when I was thinking about this, I thought, I have loads and loads and loads and loads of 1930s fabrics. And I thought, I want to remake this quilt. I'm going to put it in my little camper, I think. And I thought, why don't I make it in the 1930s? Well, then it came around, what will I do as the background? Well, normally 1930s would have used a creamy, kind of like a muslin look in the background. I pulled one of my old shirtings fabrics, and it's kind of a creamy and black. And I pulled that as my background, knowing full well that this is going to be a little close in contrast. Now, there's going to be plenty of people that say, ooh, I can't hardly see all those squares in the different fabrics. What I like about this look is it tones down the 30s. While the 30s are typically very crisp and bright, what this does is it muddies them up a little bit. And your background is honestly just whatever you happen to like. If you like modern and clean, you might want to use black or navy or white. That's going to be strictly up to you. But when I made the first couple of blocks, I thought, ooh, I don't know if this is going to work. And you can see I've got 3 rows done. And as I sewed those 3 rows together, I started to see the pattern come to life. And where this will really be good is when it's quilted. So my quilter gets the, puts the final stamp on the success of the quilt, quite frankly. But let's take a look. This, folks, is the easiest quilt you will ever make. So laying in front of me, I've got some of the components. So I have some rectangles that actually get sewn to assembled 9 patches. So some go on either side, and that's a block. That's one thing. Then I also have a pieced block, which is 9 different 9 patches sewn in an order, and the pattern's very clear. This is cut and dried on that. But what I want to show you is I'm working predominantly, I'm going to be working with a positive 9 patch, which has 5 darks and 4 background. My background is this little black and white print, or cream. And your negative 9 patch has 5 backgrounds and 4 prints. One of the most important things that I could tell you about making 9 patches is sew in a consistent order. So for this entire project, which has a bajillion of these little squares, I sew in the same order. Now I'm going to turn these over so that you can see that right here is my positive, which has 5 darks, and here's my negative, which has 5 lights. If you look at this camera where it zooms in very clear on these, if you sew everything, all your positive and all your negative 9 patches in rows, I'm in east-west rows, so this is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and the same here. I sew every block in this quilt this same way. So when I do, my background on my positive block is always pressed out. Here's the background pressed in, and here's the background pressed out. Now when I go over to my negative 9 patch, it will automatically reverse itself. So row 1 here will be in, while row 1 here was out. Row 2 here is in, it's out, and so on and so forth. So when I do press the block at the end, and this is one of those times that I think after you make your blocks, you can certainly press all of these as long as you know the direction you're going to press them. So I press this way when I get ready to join here. See how those seams nest? Now I can even turn this if I happen to like the way a color worked better. They will always nest because they always oppose each other. If you just willy-nilly start sewing these together and throwing them down on the table, and then it comes time to put this fella together, you won't be as lucky. And see how all of those are laying clean as a whistle. That is not because I'm particularly good, it's because I thought through how I was going to sew them. Now this also bodes to the fact that, folks, you just better know where a 1/4 inch is, because I'm telling you, when you sew all these and then you put them to the planer pieces to form some of the alternate blocks, if you haven't sewed an accurate 1/4 inch, this is not going to fit. Now let me show you, I did do one quick thing. I wanted you to see when I start making these, I just make a bunch of these guys, which has 1 print and 2 background. And then I make a bunch of these guys that has 2 prints and 1 background. Now, let's say I wanted a positive 9 patch. I need 2 this way, like so. So look at this. I've got 5 prints and 4 lights. Now, all I've got to do a negative is come around and do 5 lights and 4 darks. So one of the sweetest ways to make this is just make a basket full of these guys and then lay out your block, because it's so much easier if you just start making one of these at a time. Well, we may be held up long enough that you'll get this all done because we may be sequestered now for some time. But I'm trying to work in still a fluid manner. And so I'm making like maybe 15 or 20 of each one of these. And then I make my positives and negatives. And then I make another 15 or 20. I like to have all of my prints laid out in my coloration so that I can pick up some yellow, some green, some blue, some whatever. Now, if you were just using one color, that wouldn't be an issue. Now I have used my my 4x14 to cut my strips, and I love a square ruler to cut my squares. Now I think that AccuQuilt is a fabulous way of cutting a lot of something, and or for anyone that has incurred some health issues and having trouble with your wrist with rotary cutting, then certainly it's a marvelous thing. There's a little die that I love, which is the 9 patch. And it is number 55470. Folks, for my background, this is the only way I go, because I get 9 at a time and I can cut 6 layers. 9 times 6 is 54. So I can whip out 54 of these. So what I'm doing is I'm cutting 3 strips of fabric, and that gives me 6 layers, and I plop it on here, run it through my system. I get 54 per cut. Out of those 3 strips of fabric, I get 216 squares. Let me tell you something. I kiss it each time I need to do this. That's how important this is. And the other thing is they're precisely cut. Now, for those of you who use AccuQuilt, you probably already know that there's a variety of sizes of squares. So when you get the pattern and you see, okay, this is what size Kaye used, maybe I won't use that size. Maybe I'll use something else, but you'll just have to adjust all of your other elements that live within it. So what you'll be able to do with a project like this is have some time that you can spend, and trust me, before you know it, 3, 4, 5 hours have gone by when you're working on something like this. And lots of us now have a lot of time on our hands, and if we're going to stay home and stay safe, I'd love to have you share some pictures of what your block looks like. What style did you choose? What size? Did you adhere to the pattern size or whatever? So remember, it's a click of a button to get your pattern. Then you've got everything at hand, and if you have any questions, you know what to do. All you got to do is post them, and I try to get back and answer as many questions as I can. The only other advice I've got for you folks today is try to stay safe. We're going to make it through this. We're a smart people, and we're a great country. And we are going to survive this. We just have to stay occupied and keep our minds healthy while we're hoping our bodies stay healthy. So have a great day of sewing, and I can't wait to see what you do. Bye-bye.